Cain and Abel. Genesis 4 begins with these two brothers. Their story showcases several themes in the book of Genesis and the rest of the Bible for that matter. For example, themes like sibling rivalry and the last becoming first are shown in this story. But it also continues the spiral of disorder that began in Genesis 3. Cain's sin against Abel runs deeper as it leads to the first human death recorded in Scripture. This disorder will only get worse as we get closer to the famous flood story. But notice in this story that Cain's sin starts in the heart before it shows in his hands. In other words, the dominant theme of this story is about worship. In the middle of the story, Cain and Abel both bring offerings to God. These offerings are acts of worship to demonstrate thanksgiving and gratitude to God. But as the brief story unfolds, we see that Cain's offering is not considered acceptable by God. Why? Well, it's not because God prefers meat over veggies, because God doesn't eat. It's not because God favors Abel over Cain. God doesn't show partiality. The reason why is because Abel offered his best, the firstborn of his flock, while Cain just offered some of his crops, just enough to get by. His offering of worship is not acceptable to God because Cain displayed this act of gratitude out of an empty heart, lacking gratitude. Is it of any surprise then that when Cain develops a heart of hatred towards his brother Abel, he eventually murders him? Yet even then, God shows mercy to Cain, protecting him from the very fate of Abel. The path away from Eden is through devoting ourselves to the wrong things. And the way back to Eden, to a new beginning, is to worship God. This story shows us that we are to worship God out of gratitude, which will lead us to serve each other out of love. Genesis 4 ends somewhat strangely. Verse 26 says this, "And a son was also born to Seth, whom he named Enosh. At that time, people began to worship the Lord." It is this worship that envelops the line of Seth, which eventually leads to Jesus, the one who will restore the fractured creation. So how are we to experience a new beginning in light of what this story tells us? If you look at the world and wonder why it is so messed up, call upon the Lord. If you know that you are supposed to be your brothers and your sisters and your neighbors' keeper, it starts not with hands of flesh, but with a heart of worship towards God. There's a boys' school in Oklahoma where they have chapel every single week. The worship service ends with the same question that Cain asks, "Am I my brother's keeper?" Their answer, unlike Cain, is yes. Let us be like these young men who direct their worship to God in a way that challenges them to love God's image bearers.